She thought it would be just another quiet evening, a simple date filled with laughter, warm lights, and whispered promises. But everything changed in an instant when chaos erupted around them. Strangers clashed, tempers flared, and danger closed in, but in that moment, he didn't hesitate. With unwavering courage, he stood between her and the threat, his only thought to shield the woman he loved. What unfolded next wasn't just a fight, it was a test of loyalty, strength, and love that would change their bond forever. The night had started with an air of simplicity and warmth. The soft glow of the cafe's lights spilled out onto the street, painting the sidewalk in shades of gold. She wore a dress that flowed like a whisper in the evening breeze, and he couldn't help but steal glances at her, memorizing the way her laughter seemed to dissolve the weight of the world. For weeks they had been planning this date, a quiet dinner away from the noise of their busy lives, just two hearts finding solace in each other's presence. Neither of them imagined that the night would demand so much more from them than just conversation and stolen smiles. They sat across from each other, fingers brushing occasionally over the table, their connection deeper than either had dared to admit. His eyes softened when they met hers, filled with a silent promise that he would always protect her. That promise, though unspoken, would soon be tested in a way neither of them expected. It began faintly, the sound of raised voices from somewhere down the street. At first it was only a murmur, background noise that did not intrude on their moment. She tilted her head curiously, but he waved it off with a smile, assuring her it was nothing. Yet as the voices grew louder, harsher, and more aggressive, the air shifted. She felt the tension roll through him as he turned his head toward the sound, his jaw tightening. A fight had broken out just outside the cafe, two men clashing with ferocity that drew a small crowd of onlookers. She wanted to ignore it, to cling to the safety of their little world inside, but fate was not so kind. The fight spilled closer, feet pounding against the pavement, shouts filling the night. One of the men, wild-eyed and stumbling from a blow, staggered dangerously near their table. Her breath caught as a chair tipped over with a crash, and in that moment, her date reacted instinctively. Without hesitation, he rose from his seat, stepping between her and the chaos as though his body alone could shield her from harm. She tried to call his name, her voice trembling, but he stood tall, shoulders squared, every line of his posture declaring that he would not let danger touch her. His heart hammered in his chest, not from fear for himself, but from the singular thought that she must be kept safe. The man who had stumbled into their space lifted his head, eyes wild, fists clenched, ready to lash out at anything near him. For a moment, time seemed suspended. She could see the determination in her date's eyes, the silent vow that love was not only about flowers or words or gentle moments, but about courage when it mattered most. The aggressor lunged forward, and before she could even process what was happening, he met the threat with calm, unflinching resolve. His hand shot out, firm but controlled, holding the man back, using his strength not to inflict pain but to create a barrier. The crowd outside grew louder, gasps and shouts mingling with the crack of fists meeting flesh. But here, in this small circle of chaos, she was untouched because he had chosen to be her shield. Her heart raced, fear and awe colliding inside her. She had always known he was kind, gentle, someone who made her laugh and held her hand as though it was the most precious thing in the world. But she had never seen this side of him, the fierce protector who would stand unyielding even in the face of violence. She realized then that love wasn't only about the quiet moments of happiness. It was also about the storm, about the way someone stood for you when the world threatened to break in. The man struggling against him shoved harder, but her date's stance didn't waver. He pushed the aggressor away just enough to create distance, his eyes locked on the threat, every muscle ready to move again if needed. His voice was steady when he spoke, low and commanding, urging the man to back off. There was no anger in him, only conviction, the kind that comes from knowing what you must protect. The other man, disoriented and angry, staggered back toward the fight he had come from, leaving their space behind. But the tension did not vanish immediately. She remained frozen in her seat, her hands trembling, her eyes fixed on him as though seeing him for the first time. He turned back to her slowly, and in his expression she saw not pride or bravado, but a quiet relief. He reached out, his hand gentle as it brushed hers, grounding her in the aftermath of fear. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice carrying all the reassurance she needed. Those two words wrapped around her like armor, stronger than any wall, more powerful than any promise. She blinked, Tears threatening, not from sadness but from the overwhelming surge of emotion flooding her chest. Her heart had been shaken, not by the fight, but by the way he had chosen her safety above all else. In that instant, she understood something she hadn't before. True love wasn't about grand declarations. It was about the courage to act when it mattered most, about the silent, instinctive choice to protect. The cafe staff hurried to settle the chaos, ushering the fight away from their doors, but for her, the world had narrowed to just him. He sat down again, reaching across the table to hold her trembling hands, his thumb tracing soothing circles against her skin. He didn't speak much after that, didn't boast about what he had done or act as though he was a hero. He simply held her gaze, steady and calm, giving her the space to breathe again. And that quiet strength was what broke her heart open completely. She realized that she could face storms, chaos, even fear, as long as he was by her side. The night had not gone as planned, their romantic dinner interrupted by violence and noise, but in its place something more profound had been born. Trust had deepened, love had revealed its truest form, and she had seen the man she cared for in a light that would forever change her. For the rest of the evening, she stayed close, leaning into the comfort of his presence, replaying the moment over and over in her mind. His bravery wasn't about fighting. It was about standing firm, about choosing her, about loving her fiercely enough to protect her no matter the cost. And she knew that this night, though it began like any other, had become a story she would never forget, a story of love that proved itself not in words, but in courage. The city had a rhythm that night, a pulse of neon lights and restless footsteps, but for them, time seemed to slow the moment they sat together. The restaurant was warm and alive, laughter spilling from nearby tables, the scent of spices drifting in the air, the soft hum of music weaving through it all. She smiled at him across the table, the kind of smile that carried both comfort and mystery, the kind that made him forget for a moment that the world outside existed. He couldn't help but think how lucky he was, sitting there with her, watching the way candlelight danced in her eyes. Their conversation was easy, flowing like a river, laughter breaking through every few minutes. She told him a story about her childhood that made her laugh so hard she covered her face, embarrassed, and he leaned in closer, cherishing the way her voice carried warmth. He reached for her hand without thinking, and when she didn't pull away, his heart tightened in his chest. The date was everything he had hoped for, simple, genuine, full of the quiet magic that makes two people forget the rest of the world. But then, like a storm pushing through calm skies, the night shifted. At first it was distant, muffled voices raised in anger somewhere down the street, nothing that seemed to concern them. He noticed her glance toward the sound, and he offered a reassuring smile, brushing it off with a casual joke. Yet as the voices grew louder, harsher, and closer, the unease in the air thickened. The sound of something crashing, a bottle, perhaps, made several diners glance toward the window. She looked back at him, uncertainty flickering in her eyes, and this time he didn't dismiss it. The fight erupted in the street before they had time to process. A crowd gathered as two men clashed violently, fists flying, curses tearing through the night. Chairs inside the restaurant scraped as people shifted uncomfortably, whispering about whether they should stay or leave. He felt her hand tremble slightly against his, and instinct tightened every muscle in his body. He told himself it was just outside, just noise, but deep down he knew he was already preparing for what might come. It happened fast, as chaos always does. One of the men, staggering from a blow, stumbled toward the entrance of the restaurant. A waiter tried to block him, but the man shoved past, eyes wild, desperation and rage mixing into something dangerous. Tables rattled as he moved through, knocking over a glass, startling a woman nearby. Fear spread like sparks in dry grass, diners gasping, pulling back, clutching their belongings. And then he realized the man was coming closer, heading straight toward the corner where they sat. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The danger wasn't vague anymore, it was here, real, pressing in on them. And in that split second, he didn't think. He acted. He pushed back his chair and rose to his feet, moving instinctively to place himself between her and the approaching threat. His body became a wall, a shield, as if every fiber of his being understood that her safety came before anything else. She tried to say his name, her voice thin with fear, but he didn't glance back. His eyes locked on the man stumbling toward them, wild and unpredictable, and his jaw set with quiet determination. There was no bravado in his stance, no hunger for a fight. It was something deeper, fiercer, a primal, unwavering choice. He was ready to take whatever came so that she wouldn't have to. The man lunged clumsily, his arms sweeping out, and instinctively he caught the movement, grabbing the man's wrist with firm control. He pushed him back, not with aggression but with enough force to keep him away. The man cursed, thrashing, but he stood steady, his feet planted like roots, his expression calm but unyielding. Around them, the restaurant had gone silent, every eye watching, every breath held, as though the entire room recognized what was unfolding. She sat frozen, her heart pounding so hard it hurt, watching him transform before her eyes. She had always known him as gentle, the man who carried her bags without being asked, who remembered the small details of her day, who looked at her like she was the only person in the room. But now she saw something else, strength, courage, the raw determination to protect her no matter what it cost. And that realization broke something open in her chest. The aggressor tried again, swinging clumsily, but this time he pushed him firmly back toward the door, his voice cutting through the tension. "Leave. Now." The words weren't shouted, but they carried a weight that silenced even the background murmurs. There was no room for argument in them, only truth, only conviction. The man stumbled back, caught off guard by the sheer force of presence in front of him. For a long moment, their eyes locked, anger meeting resolve, and then the intruder turned, retreating back toward the chaos outside. The door slammed behind him, and the restaurant exhaled in unison, relief flooding the space. But for her, the world was still narrowed to just him. He turned back to her slowly, and the moment their eyes met, she felt her throat tighten. He wasn't proud or boastful, wasn't trying to prove anything. His expression was soft now, almost concerned, as if he worried he had scared her. He reached out, his hand brushing hers gently, grounding her back in the safety of his presence. "I'm okay," she whispered, though her voice wavered. He gave a small nod, but his hand lingered on hers, steady and warm, as if to remind her that he had her, that nothing would break through as long as he stood beside her. Her chest swelled with emotion she couldn't contain. She realized then that love wasn't measured in pretty words or grand gestures. It was measured in moments like this, in the quiet, instinctive courage to stand between danger and the person you love. She had never felt more cherished, more protected, more certain that what they shared was real. For the rest of the evening, even as the restaurant returned to normal and staff moved quickly to erase the signs of chaos, she stayed close to him, her hand never leaving his. Every time she glanced at him, she saw not just the man she had agreed to go on a date with, but the man who had proven, without hesitation, that her safety was his first thought. That kind of love could not be faked, could not be forced. It was real, powerful, and undeniable. And as the night drew on, she knew that what had started as just another date had transformed into something she would never forget. Because sometimes it takes a storm to show you the strength of the one standing beside you, and sometimes love reveals itself not in whispers but in courage fierce enough to protect you when it matters most.